Welcome back to Homestead Dreamers. I'm Elena, and I hope that you had a great holiday with your family and friends and were able to eat tons of good food. We were traveling for the holiday and it feels so good to be back here on the homestead. This is like my happy place and I just feel so at peace when I'm here. I'm always relieved to come back here. I thought it would be fun, even though the holidays are over, to show you some of the natural decor I used on the exterior of our home. Decorating with natural things is something I'm extremely excited about with our new house, and we finished the exterior right before the holidays. So I was excited that I was actually going to be able to decorate something this year when last year I didn't really have anything to decorate. Before I give you all the details of the decor that I put together, I'll just give you a sneak peek of the entire front of the garage. It turned out so much better than what we were even envisioning. We're building a garage with an apartment up top, and this is because right now it's only the two of us and our dog, and we designed this to be attached to in the future. But right now we don't need that space and we really couldn't afford to build anything bigger than this. Our home design is kind of a mix between a modern and traditional farmhouse. We like some of the clean lines that come along with modern design, but we really like traditional elements and we really want the home to feel warm and inviting. And so right now, like I said, we only have our exterior done, and the last and final thing that we did was install these light fixtures. I really like them because they kind of have some modern elements to them, but then they also can fit with the traditional look that comes with the stone. So I'm really happy with how those turned out. The first decoration that I want to show you is the wreath. So this wreath is just from Home Depot, and I eventually want to be able to make these wreaths myself. We don't have any evergreens here on our property yet, and I just didn't have the time to go harvest some branches elsewhere. So this wreath is from Home Depot, but I want to give you a little tip of what I plan to do, and that is to save the frame that this wreath is currently on. So after this dries out a little bit more, I will compost all of these branches, and then I'm going to keep this metal frame, and I can use that to make wreaths in the fall, in the winter, even in the summer. I can use this again. I actually used one of the metal frames I had saved from last year for a fall wreath this year. I used dried hydrangeas and I made a little wreath and I hung it on our chicken coop. So although it wasn't on our house, it was still some fun addition to our chicken coop to make things a little bit more festive. The next is what I did with the light fixture. Now I did take some cuttings for this decoration, and I'm going to take this down so that you can see what I did. But I just took some small cuttings, I added some pine cones, and I kind of draped it around the light fixture, and I added a bow. What I like about this is that I can reuse the bow and then I can compost the greenery at the end of the season. So kind of my overall thought with using natural decorations is to pick things that I can compost or that can be reused in the future. And this is kind of that perfect mixture. I have the bow that's reusable, but then the cuttings I can compost. So let's see if I can get this down without a ladder. All I did was I just rested, oh, it came off pretty easily. Just kind of rested it on here, so it should be pretty easy. Okay, cool. So let me show you a close-up of this. This has boxwood, American red cedar, and then some holly in it. It's probably about 3 cuttings of each. And then I added some pine cones, which are from an eastern white pine. All of these plants were on Alex's mom's property, so I just took some cuttings from that. And then how I wrapped it together, I just used some wire from our house build. These are just some scrap pieces. I didn't have any floral wire or anything, or even string here, so I just used what we had, and this ended up working perfect. So it just goes to show that you don't need anything fancy, and it still looks really good. The coolest thing about these pine cones from the eastern white pine is that the sap on them looks like snow. There were hundreds of them, and so in the future I plan to collect some and use them for other decorations inside. I thought they would look really cool in like a big tall glass vase with them just all in there, but I think they're just really fun and festive, and it worked out perfect. The decorations look great from far away. If you get up close, you can kind of see the wire, but you'd really have to be looking for it to be able to see it. and I'm really happy with how it turned out. I threw these together in about 15 minutes and it worked out perfect. The one thing I was a little bit concerned about with using this decoration is the sap that was going to come from some of the cuttings. The only thing that appeared to have sap was from the eastern red cedar. The boxwood and the holly don't seem to have as much sap as the cedar, so that's kind of why I wanted to incorporate more cuttings than just a cedar or a pine, because I wanted to prevent any sap getting on our brand new siding. I even thought about putting like plastic wrap or something on the siding, but then that kind of defeats the purpose of it being natural and zero waste and stuff. So I didn't end up doing that, but if it became a problem, I would probably try to come up with a better solution to keep sap from getting onto the siding. Something else I'll have to consider when we start decorating indoors and using natural things is how quickly some of these things might dry out. I don't have any experience with this. I've never really had a space to decorate as my own, and so that's something I'll be experimenting with next year, but it's definitely something that I'm a little bit concerned about because it is warmer indoors, and with them being outdoors, it's not an issue. But they're definitely going to dry out faster in a warmer indoor climate. The last thing I used to decorate outdoors were these 2 holly bushes. I wanted to buy something that we could then plant once the season was over. This is a blue princess and a blue prince mixed together in one pot, and same with that one. So when you have holly and you're trying to grow it so that it will produce berries, you need a male and female plant. Our nursery actually sold these together already mixed, which worked out great. That's a quick overview of some of the decor I used this winter. I also want to show you some of the popcorn that I grew this fall, because this would be a great addition for any fall natural decor. Popcorn and corn stalks are some of my favorite things to use in decor because you already have them on hand when you put them in your garden, and so it just makes sense to add them as a decoration. So in this box I have some goodies. This is a lot of the popcorn that I grew this year. I planted this popcorn later in the season, so unfortunately it didn't have time to actually dry on the stalks, which is what you want when you grow popcorn. But I did go ahead and harvest every cob of corn, and I've had them in this box drying indoors. So I'll do another video kind of talking more about growing popcorn and how to know whether or not it's at the right moisture content. And I also kind of wanted to try popping some of this on camera so that you could see how it turned out. But what I really wanted to show you is the beautiful colors that come from this type of popcorn. This variety is called glass gem popcorn, and I don't know if you can see this. I'll throw some B-roll over top, but this popcorn comes in these beautiful colors. It has some deep purples and greens, and then yellows and other greens, and every single one of them looks slightly different. So some cobs have more of just the darker colors, but then others have a variety, and then others have like that green and blue range of colors. Since you need to make sure they are at the proper moisture content, a lot of times you may have to dry some of them indoors, which makes it really fun because you can pull back that stalk, tie them together in little bunches and set them places as decor or hang them. So this is something that's really fun to grow. It's functional because you can then eat it after you're done using it as decoration, but then it is also beautiful. Here's a closer look at all of the beautiful colors on these cobs. Now, unfortunately, a lot of our popcorn had cutworm issues, and so I broke off a lot of the damaged parts, but I kept anything that looked healthy. This variety of corn can also be used as a flint corn, so you can grind it up and use it as cornmeal. I have read that since they are multicolor like this, they make the cornmeal look gray, so things can turn out a little bit interesting when you actually bake with it. We're going to try to use it as popcorn first, but if all else fails, I'll try grinding it. We don't currently have a mill or anything, so I would have to do some research into how we would make that happen. You might be wondering why I'm sharing about sustainable decor on our homesteading channel, and the main reason is because living sustainably is a huge part of homesteading for us, and so if I can share some of the ideas that I have for decorating sustainably, then I hope that someone else can take those ideas and run with them and find new and better ideas. So that's kind of why I'm sharing about it. When it comes to the holidays, I tend to have a lot more anxiety because of the amount of waste that's generated in general, whether that's food waste or from cheap decorations or just all of the waste that comes with wrapping gifts. Those things tend to cause a lot of anxiety for me. So if I can kind of lessen that by making my own natural decor, it makes me feel a little bit more at peace. So I hope that by me sharing some of those ideas that you can take them and run with them. I'm also sharing about them after the holiday because it's something that you kind of have to plan for in advance. So for instance, if you're thinking that you might want to have your own corn decorations, you're going to have to add popcorn to your growing list next year. Or maybe you want to grow your own pumpkins, and so you need to add pumpkins to your growing list. I personally have not had much success with growing pumpkins in the past, and we have a huge orchard near us that does pumpkins. So for now, we just get them from the orchard, but I do hope that one day we can kind of have like a mini pumpkin patch on our property. My biggest concern with pumpkins is squash bugs. I know that a lot of people deal with squash bugs, but they are just something that can be really hard to control if it gets out of control. So on our new property, I'm focusing on growing beneficial plants that hopefully invite beneficial insects to the property before I plant any of those type of vegetables, which I know will attract some of those really large pesky pests. I mentioned that the variety of popcorn I grew this year was glass gem popcorn. In the past, I've also grown a variety called Japanese hull-less popcorn, and that popcorn I had a ton of success with. I grew it 2 years in a row, and it was literally the best popcorn I've ever tasted in my entire life. It didn't have that chewy texture that you sometimes get from the popcorn that you buy in the store. It was very nice, crisp, and crunchy. So if you're looking for a popcorn to try, I would also try the Japanese hull-less. It'll be interesting to see how that popcorn tastes in comparison to the glass gem. I haven't popped any of that yet because, like I said, when I harvested it, it was too wet. And so once that dries out a little bit more, probably in the next 2 weeks or so, I'll test pop it and see what happens. But if you're looking for a good variety, I think either of those would be a good option. Another thing I want to share with you is a little bit of a treasure that my dad found and gifted to me over the holiday. He was cleaning up some of my grandma's stuff. Unfortunately, we lost her last year around this time, and she was an avid gardener. And so when he was cleaning up some of the things, he found a folder of hers where she had collected things that I had given her. So there were some cards that I had given her when I was younger, some drawings from like when I was in first grade, all of those things. But in that same folder, she also had a little book on how to build and operate a greenhouse, which is super ironic because this is one of those things that's on my homestead dream list. I eventually would love to have a greenhouse to start my seeds in, and honestly, I would love it to be a place I could hang out in year round. And so this book seems like the perfect start to that journey, and I'm really excited to start diving in and reading all about greenhouses. I don't know a ton about it. I know that a lot of people like to use recycled glass windows for their greenhouses, but Alex and I both are engineers and we like to make things as effective and efficient as possible. So I'm hoping that this gives some of those engineering concepts and ideas behind how a greenhouse works so that we can kind of come up with the best design. We've thrown around the idea of making a timber frame greenhouse, which if you're not familiar with what timber framing is, I'll throw some images on the screen so you can kind of see. We know it's a lot of work, but we get excited about learning new skills, and that would be a totally new skill set for us. So that might be what we do for our greenhouse. The other really cool thing about this little gift is that when I opened up this book, she had some pages in here that she wrote notes on, and she had printed out some pages, and some of these pages are from 2001, which is kind of funny. But in here, I also found some seeds, and I have no idea if these seeds will even germinate or how old they are. I tried to find dates stamped on them, and unfortunately, there's no dates. Typically, when you buy seeds, they have a date stamped on them on when they were packed. These do say that they were made in the USA, so hopefully they were grown in the USA, I'm guessing. But I'm thinking I'm going to run a couple of tests on these seeds to see if I can get them to sprout. And if so, I will plant some this year. I think that would be a really cool way to honor and remember my grandma, because clearly These seeds were hers, and she has been an inspiration for me for a really long time, and I miss her dearly. So it would be really cool to be able to plant some of these in my garden. Now, I do know that one of her favorite plants was the Shasta daisy, and that's some of the seeds here. So if these ones don't germinate, I think I'll buy some this year to plant in memory of her. Alex and I are getting married in 2024, so I think it could be really fun to have some of these daisies there at the wedding, or even like the brunch that we're having the day after. But I honestly have never grown daisies before, and I don't know how long they take to get to full size. These just say the days to germination. It doesn't tell me how long it takes to get to maturity, so I'll have to look that up and see if they would even be blooming by that time. I thought that that was really cool and special that my dad found these things and gave it to me. He's already given me a huge box of books from her, so I have a ton of gardening reading to do. When we finish this house, I'm going to be diving deep into all of these things because I love learning and trying new things, and I think there's no way better to do that than by reading some of the books that my grandma read. Thanks so much for hanging out with me. I'll be talking about my spring garden planning soon, so make sure to stay tuned for that.